Okay, so I'm having a strange connection, and it's gonna probably fool with me a little bit, but looks like the camera, what looks like to be that the camera's off to me right now. I think it's still on, and I probably won't be able to see anything yet if you say that it is on. But it's more of an experiment because I don't usually do something like this live. Um, but I guess I thought I would try an experiment with talking about some subject or a subject that I think is very pertinent today, and that is how to face fear and how to not let it make the decisions for us. I have been living with OCD since I was 14 years old, when I first had my first onset of it. And so I have to practice every day. Every day, all the tools that I've picked up over the years, I have to keep close with me to function and to try to stay sane and grounded as much as possible. And so I'm just kind of giving some background on where I'm coming from with some of this stuff. I see that there is a lot of course, a lot of fear in the world today, and always has been a lot of fear in the world. And one of the things with exposure response prevention therapy that is part of OCD recovery treatment, it's really the main factor. It's a component or an aspect of cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's really about understanding. Basically, the crux of OCD is uncertainty and an intolerance of uncertainty for specific things and for specific themes of things. And so uncertainty is really the thing to tackle. And when it comes to OCD and trying to live and function with a certain amount of comfort, rainstorm, certain amount of comfort with discomfort, a little bit of discomfort, or realizing that, or in addition, realizing that there's so little that we really do have any control over, and sort of relinquishing that control. It's not, by no means is it an easy thing. And it takes a lot of continuous work, and I'll be working on it for my entire life. I never considered myself, some kind of finished product or something like that. I have to keep working on this stuff every day and try to keep your muscles, it's like exercising. But there's so little that we do have control over. And there's so many what-ifing that people are familiar with. There's so much what-ifing, like what if that happens and what if this happens? What if this could happen? Our minds are very creative. We're creative people. We're created that way by our creator. And the mind is incredibly quick, and thoughts are extremely quick. And the associations that the brain makes are extremely quick. And the imagination is very vivid and unbounded and creative. And it can get very hard to focus your attention or to understand what is our relationship with our thoughts. Thoughts, and not our active thinking, where we're actually really sort of pursuing something in thought or gnawing on something or entertaining something or considering something, but rather what are like our relationship to our thoughts, our constant flow of thoughts should be or is. And a very important component of all this probably is, the concept in mindfulness and in many other places, but it's emphasized in mindfulness a lot, is that we are not our thoughts. In other words, our thoughts don't define us. They're not actually opinions that we have. They are like a free-flowing creative wind. It doesn't stop. And I'm not saying this as someone who's mastered this practice. Actually, this is sort of therapy for me to talk about it. But our relationship with our thoughts it really has to, for many of us, maybe most of it, I don't know, many of us, needs to be relearned and reevaluated. And there's certain things that we believe about our thoughts that we have to correct. For instance, that we're supposed to be able to control our thoughts, that we're supposed to be able to not have thoughts or something that we don't want to have, and all these types of things, whether you have OCD or any anxiety disorder that's diagnosed, or whether you're just a human being on the day-to-day out here what-ifing in your mind about the future, of which we don't have any control over, which goes to uncertainty. And that's like maybe that's the crux of fear, the unknown and the uncertainty. So it's not an overnight. It's never, this kind of thing is never an overnight process. And like I said, I never consider myself done with this work. This is going to be a lifelong endeavor for me. And I'm very grateful for all my tools that I have to continue to add to and to strengthen. But a certain aspect of all this is surrender, and just surrendering what we don't have control over, and thus sitting with uncertainty that we thought was unbearable until we sit with it for a while and realize that our uncertainties are part of life, and it contributes to our happiness to not engage with our uncertainties as much as possible, because when we do that, we're actually sparking a process of continual anxiety looping and hamster wheeling. We're actually contributing to our anxiety when we engage with the what if and we try to comfort ourselves and try to reassure ourselves that no, this can't happen, that can't happen. And it's a very human thing to do. There's nothing wrong with it. You can't judge us. No, none of us can judge ourselves for doing that. But it's really good to have tools to help us, like, hey, how do we live with this uncertainty and this fear of the unknown and the future? And a sense of, I can tell you from my practices that I still have to, like today, I'm not anywhere near 100% with what I'm talking about. Not even close. But I've made enough headway, thank God, in the last couple of years to come to some understanding of really what the process of how our anxious brain works, and why it's really a cycle that is much more about a response to our thoughts rather than it is about our thoughts themselves. And really, I've tried to say to myself in the last few years, no thought has ever really caused me any pain. The pain has come in my interpretation of the thought and my response to it, and what I'm trying to do to correct it or get rid of it or undo it or any of these types of things. That is all the process of me accidentally, with good intention, trying to protect myself, but coming to realize that I'm actually I'm in the disorder cycle. I don't know if that's what you want to call it. I'm feeding the problem. by accident. It comes from it seems like that's the right thing to do. I want to protect myself. However, it's a trap. Not that we're doing intentionally, but the mind is very sophisticated, and our emotions are very hard to understand a lot of times, and the tendency is to very much engage with our what ifing, and because thoughts can be scary. That's the thing. Our thoughts can be, and we could maybe assume that we're going to have some very scary thoughts, which is different than thinking. And we don't have to listen to our thoughts too much. We don't have to take them too seriously. We can have a lot of sense of humor about them. The greatest comedians whom I love, like Dave Chappelle and George Carlin and whatever, anyone you love, any comedian, Jackie Mason, Mel Brooks, I get the impression, I'm not saying that they probably don't worry about things, but I think when you have a certain sense of humor about your thoughts, you realize that this is your mind just kind of being creative. And you could write a sketch comedy show out of your quote unquote mind babble. As me and my best friend would call it. So anyway, like I said when I started, this is an experiment for me to do this thing kind of live. I don't want to stay too long. But maybe this is also for therapy for me. So trying to surrender to what we don't have control over, trying to accept what we do have control over and work on those things, and to try to reframe our relationship with our thoughts and with our fears. And identify our fears, and it's okay, to be okay with ourselves being vulnerable and very human, and having fears and angers and resentments and all kinds of things that human beings have. That's just how we're made, and accept ourselves as well, and also to reinterpret things. Like we might think, oh, we're not having a good day. Why? Because I'm thinking about this, or I had this thought, or something like that. And really understanding that there's a certain feeling that produces, but the thought, the labeling we're putting on it is not actually true. It's not correct. It's what in cognitive behavioral therapy would be called a cognitive distortion. We're not supposed to have thoughts that don't make us uncomfortable at times, and so we can't interpret that we're not doing well because we're having thoughts that make us uncomfortable. Thoughts, they're thoughts. What can you do about them? So anyway, just a few thoughts, or thinking, a few conscientious thoughts. Anyway, much love to everybody. All the best. Have a great day.